We are back for another amazing conversation with Dr. T and Dr. T. We are back
Girl.
at it and we have lots to say, honey, because there has been a lot going on this particular week. And some of you may have seen the shenanigans, some of you may not, but we're going to talk about it. But as you guys know, we don't talk about the people, we talk about the problem. But I'm going to describe the scenario to you guys so you kind of know what I'm talking about, kind of, without me calling names, because what we want to focus is really on the topic that's come up that everybody's talking about. So, one of our dear brethren, a member of the Melanin Crew, has gone out with another female member of the Melanin Crew and decided to proclaim that other types of lives matter. And this has rubbed several people the wrong way because clearly it diminishes and minutes the message of Black Lives Matter. And also, people are scratching their head like, what? Did you not understand what we meant when we said Black Lives Matter? It's a given that all lives matter. Black Lives Matter was making a particular statement, but that is not what we're going to talk about today. So, this particular incident has led to discussions everywhere on social platforms everywhere. People are talking about it, and folks are on various sides of the topic. There are some people that are saying, when someone has a mental health disease, we ought to give them grace. And this is what just an example of someone with untreated mental health disease. Or others were saying, just give him some grace. It can't be easy having mental health problems. And then the other side of the coin is saying, don't we all have mental health issues at some level? And we all seem to be able to be functioning members of society. So, what is up with this? So, we are asking the question today, Dr. Trissa. We are trying to figure out, where do we draw the line? At what point, because there seems to be such a polarized opinion about this, at what point do we say grace because it's mental health? And at what point do we say, we give you a lot of grace? Now you've got to be accountable for your actions. So let's talk about it. What do you think? I mean, mental health is a serious condition. Mental health problems are
It
serious,
is. It
right?
is.
But we
It
have
is.
so many people who are very functional with mental health conditions. So should we offer grace when somebody does something that seems to be so inflammatory? Or are people who are saying, this was manipulative? I see right through you. I see what you're doing, dude. I see what you're doing. And this is manipulative. You are manipulating my grace. You're manipulating my energy. You're manipulating my attention span because I ain't got time for this.
And I'm going to have to be with one of those. Why are we even paying attention to what these
Well,
folk do? Right?
well,
That's my position on it. I'm going to be absolutely honest. Why are we putting so much attention on what these folk do? They do not put food on my table. They don't do none of that for me.
nope.
So it don't even matter. But
Well, Dr.
I
Trista said, let's shut up the topic. Let's all go home. But
it
they
don't
affect
matter for me.
our lives, right? Like
But
their actions affect us because
it can have an effect. It can have an effect
there is
because
a political, which we're not a political
right.
platform, but there's a political consequence to this.
There is. And what I think about even more than that is um we do have the younger impressionable. You would hope that as we get older we mature a little bit more, but you do have a little bit more of those younger impressionable ones that are looking towards these groups of people, whether they're celebrities or influencers or whatever, and paying attention to what they're doing. So you know what, there's going to be a level of responsibility that you're going to hold when you put yourself in these places,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we have to say that because there's no he could have been working a regular 9 to 5 job and no one would have known his name,
Right.
but he has chosen,
Some
and
of
they
us wish that was the
choose
case.
and they choose to be these particular things. And so I feel like there's a level of responsibility that's going to be coming with that. You're putting yourself out there for the world to see. That we know that there's going to be certain things. Now,
She got to take a breath.
I do,
Take a
because
breath.
mental health disorders are
Serious.
very serious and they are to be taken serious. But and there is to be grace to be given, but at what extent? Like, where are we going to draw the line? right? Do we give grace to someone who's gone and done something highly illegal because they have a mental health disorder? Or are we going to give
That's a
grace
good
only
question.
because, okay, well, technically it didn't hurt anybody, but it's in poor taste, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even gonna lie, I'm also torn on the, is it because he's a part of the melanin crew that we're even giving this a thought? Like when we had folks biting the heads off of bats, that was just seen as like whatever because they
Mm-hmm.
weren't of the highly melanated population. So
Mm-hmm.
it becomes this battle of, are we doing it because the melanin is what's causing us to want to 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 harp on what it is that he's doing, or are we looking at it more along the lines of it's truly because it's a diagnosis of someone with a mental illness? Would it have been different if the words had been different, if the person who had done it was different? Like, what exactly are we holding on to?
I think sometimes, to your point, that unfortunately, when you have someone of high influence, because of fame and high influence, because of monetary values, um, we kind of feel like somehow, and in some to some extent, they represent us. Now, clearly, we are a very diverse group of
Diverse.
people, but the
Mm-hmm,
world has always seen us as being so monolithic that
mm-hmm,
we kind of cringe when, especially when there is a mass movement to really make a social change, and you
mm-hmm,
see someone that then has influence, that it has the ability to counter that social movement and that social
mm-hmm.
momentum. And no one should really have that much power, but some
True.
people do look at these individuals as having that much power and influence, and to a certain extent, like you said, they are highly influential on the younger generations as well. And so when they make these statements that seem to counter, I mean, we have been working so hard for all of these social equities, to see
Right.
something like this that kind of throws sand in our face. It is insultive. It is, and at a certain extreme, part of what, okay, I'm a little conflicted about this because I, certainly respect the challenges of being mentally challenged and experiencing this life, which is hard for anybody, and then to have the mental challenge of depression, anxiety, and things like that, and then still have to navigate through this life. I have great respect for people who are able to have those disorders and then triumph through it, just like I would somebody who's dealing with cancer and triumph through
Right.
life, right?
Chronic diseases.
Chronic
Yeah.
diseases and triumph through life, someone
Mhm.
who's living in poverty and triumph through life. We
Right,
all have
right,
our challenges, and
right.
to a certain extent, the United States Prevention Services and Task Force, I always get their acronym mixed up, y'all know who I'm talking about. We have so much anxiety now that we have now officially are responsible for screening individuals 18 to 65 because the nation is so anxious as a result of the pandemic. Or maybe we were always anxious and the pandemic just kind of exacerbated the underlying
Mhm,
anxiety. So people are having really real life struggles with being
mhm,
able to even cope with life.
mhm,
And so it
mhm.
kind of to part of the issue that really is conflicting for me is when I see that someone has the ability to make logical decisions in every other aspect of their life. Well, I may not necessarily agree with their decisions,
Mhm.
but they seem to be living functionally, right? So you don't have to agree with how they decide to make their decisions and manage their life, but if they're showing some level of functionality, so I'm able to function as a regular human being in my finances. As a matter of fact, I may even be a billionaire, but I'm definitely a multimillionaire for sure.
Mhm.
People
Mhm.
consider me to be a genius in my craft, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
I'm making music that sells, out the wahoo. I make random devices that people can only listen to my music on, and make money from that. So I'm smart enough to do those things. I'm smart enough to have a family, to raise a family. So I'm smart enough, and I'm functionally enough to have those consistent consistent aspects of, or have consistent behavior in those aspects of my life
Mhm.
that are reasonable, pretty reasonable. A lot of people may or may not agree with the decisions, but pretty reasonable. I think we can all agree they're pretty reasonable
Mm-hmm.
decisions. Clearly, if somebody's a multimillionaire, I'm not going to say they're not going to have, they don't have reasonable decision making unless they're doing it illegally. If
Right,
they're
right,
illegally making that amount of money, they probably know what they're doing.
right,
So
right.
it makes me feel like, are we being manipulated? Are we self manipulating? Right? Like, is this person doing these activities and we're kind of like, oh, but he has mental health issues, so he gets a pass. Does he
Mm-hmm.
always get a pass? And at one point, like you said, what is that line when they hurt somebody physically, when they hurt somebody emotionally? We don't seem to care about the emotion. So when we
No.
hurt somebody physically, or when we are now countering a movement, like, is that the line?
Right, right. What is gonna be the line? And you're right. Like I didn't even think about it that way. In terms of even like there are all these things that he's doing that makes sense is not the right word, but they're working. They're working for him.
Mm-hmm.
Is this just part of what's working for him? Is this a part of it too? To like you said, flare up or ignite press because we know in that world there's no such thing as bad press.
Right, right, right. And so it leads me to ask the question: do people with mental health conditions sometimes manipulate? People without mental health conditions and manipulate.
To
So,
manipulate. So yes, absolutely. They absolutely can. That
so
like you said,
yeah, so I
without it you
absolutely
can. So
think people with mental health conditions are human. They have the
right,
ability to have other human traits such as manipulation,
right.
and it's very possible that this is manipulative. Now, we're not saying that this is the case for this particular individual, but I think it does raise that question. Like,
Right.
if you see that someone is actively manipulating, or we are just overgracing, if that's such a term. But follow me with this. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
sometimes extend so much grace, and I know the biblical scholars are going to be like, there is no such thing as too much grace. But in the non-religious aspect, I'm using the word grace. Um, are we giving passes? Maybe I'll use that word instead. Are we giving too many passes just simply because we feel this level of compassion, but to the detriment of society, to the detriment of things that really matter in an election year, to the detriment. And perhaps
True.
this person shouldn't have that much power, and that's a whole other conversation.
True.
But there are people who have mental health conditions who manipulate other people in their families for money, who
Right.
manipulate, who know, who they can manipulate. They're smart enough to know, and they're smart enough to tag the people who they know are compassionate and have a lot of grace and have a lot of forgiveness. And they tend to target those people and use their mental health disorders to try to get that level of compassion to get whatever they're seeking. Um, I think that's possible. I think they can both
Mhm.
coexist.
I agree. And what I keep thinking about is when we're starting to think about when we start to think about passing out those levels of grace, how about we look a little bit more close, right? If we're going to be talking about giving grace to the people that are um, having mental health disorders, you know, instead of scorning that person who's coming up to you and asking you for something, maybe there's someone you need to extend some grace to. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
If
right.
that population that no one else is wanting to, if we're looking to extend grace, we can find places. We can find places, but we don't need to be looking to the high and mighty. Um, or the ones that have the power. It becomes a very one-sided thing, and it's because of the popularity we feel like now we should extend the grace versus it being truly someone that's having some sort of disorder, some sort of mental
Like a
health
sincere struggle.
the grace.
Yeah. And I think you have the potential to cross over into that category of enablement, right?
Right.
So what it looks like when you are unjustifiably granting grace, if there's such
Hmm.
a word. But follow me with this. If someone is you're granting grace in an area where, and I'm not talking biblically, y'all, because I know there's a different concept when we talk biblically. I'm talking sort of just everyday semantics. When you're granting people grace over and over in a way that enables them to
Right.
continue to have bad behavior. So
Right.
grace is intended to allow you so that you have another chance of trying to do better. right?
Right.
Of
Right. Right.
trying to make a change, of trying to be repentive, and for a lack of a better word.
Right.
But when you are continually utilizing somebody's grace to manipulate them to get what you want, you have absolutely no intent of being repentive
Changing.
or no
Right.
intent of changing,
Right.
then that, I think that person then becomes an enabler, especially when you
Enabler.
recognize it. When you
Right.
recognize that you're being used and you do it over and over and you keep doing, then you are now enabling that
Right.
person's behavior, and they will, and it's to their detriment. So now you have
Right.
co-signed on their lack of development, of their
Destructive.
lack of growth,
Hmm.
on their struggle, because they're
Hmm.
struggling with that manipulation. That manipulation is a struggle for them, right? But when you co-sign the behavior, then it allows them to feel like they're justified in doing it over and over again. And then I think, to
I
your
agree.
point, Dr. Trissa, it puts a bad name on people who are for real having problems with their mental health, people who are dealing with hallucinations, people who are dealing with drug abuse or drug addictions, people who are
Mhm.
dealing with depression, anxiety, who really need the grace and deserve the
Mhm.
grace and are having sincere struggles. And you
Mhm.
will, I feel like you will see more patterns, more consistency in their behaviors, more dysfunction in multiple areas of their life and not just in one particular
Right.
area, that
Right.
people are even like, is it really dysfunctional or is it intentional? We're not really sure. Like, if we're not really sure, it may not be dysfunctional, it may be
Right.
intentional.
Maybe.
And so I feel like it just gives such a bad name for a, or paints mental health conditions in such a bad light, when we are working as a nation to really understand and bring light and appreciation and
Right.
awareness to those who are really having these serious conditions and are struggling with it from
Right.
day to day.
Right.
You
I
know,
agree.
it's
I agree. And it's to the benefit of, it's to the benefit of none but the individual. It's to the benefit of none but the individual. Um, the community, the people and the community that need the past, need the grace, need the support, they may not get it because there becomes almost like this fatigue of extending it where it's
mm-hmm,
not necessarily needed so much,
mm-hmm,
and then we have nothing to offer the rest.
right.
I mean, yes,
That's
it should
true.
be, it should be ever flowing, but there comes a point in time, it's like, okay, this is, if this is how they are always going to be, whoever it is that may be ill, or what, if this is what it's going to be every single time, I don't trust that this is what everybody does, then this is a pattern. You start labeling people and putting people in boxes, which we shouldn't do, but we know that's what happens,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Yes.
And so they're not going to be believed, they're not going to be trusted, they're not going to be, and they're going to be bypassed, and that's not what we're looking for. So it makes
Yeah,
it
and
bad
you
for
bring up
all.
like compassion fatigue. I think that's real. I think you can have compassion fatigue. And I think, the whole society don't really understand these conditions. There is hardly an understanding of depression and anxiety to begin with. There's even less understanding of bipolar disease. There's even less understanding of schizophrenia and things like that. And
Right.
so, of borderline personalities, of histrionic personalities, like, the world doesn't really understand those particular disorders. And so it's like, if you do this types of things, then people have a warped understanding of what the behavior looks like. And there were people who are like, well, why not just be on medication? We don't know, this person could be on medication. and
Mm-hmm.
and if they're not on medication, that in of itself could be an expression of the disorder, because we know
Right.
that sometimes certain type of mental health disorders, I'm not going to call out particular types, but certain types
Right.
do struggle with utilizing or taking medication because, especially in fame, there some people have admitted to using, um, try not to call out the disorder, a particular aspect of the disorder, a particular feature of the disorder, because it helps their creativity. And so
Mm-hmm.
they tend to be in a more creative mindset when they're not treated, when they're untreated, because their energies are high, and the thoughts are flowing, and they have big ideas and big
Mm-hmm.
visions and big dreams, and they feel more creative in that space. And so there are some people who are, especially artists of various kinds, who will utilize that aspect of their untreated illness to manifest their creativity. And so sometimes it's a struggle to get people to take their medication because they see in their head that there's a benefit to it and they don't really see the detriment of it or the risk of being in that particular headspace at the time. And so it's really a struggle to get people to understand that you need to be on your meds, because while you're in that particular headspace, all the other aspects of your life are falling apart because they tend not to be able to do their household activities. And that's why I was talking about when I talk about the consistency of it, right? Because usually when they're in that particular mode, then you start to see the destruction and the dysfunction because they're not going to work, they're not getting up, they're not cleaning themselves. Sometimes hygiene is bad, their homes are disorderly, so you see all these other aspects throughout other parts of their life where you start to see the manifestation of the disorder that's untreated. So when you have someone who has seemed to be treated relatively or seem to be pretty stable in other aspects of their life, but has this timely onset that correlates with marketing stuff, it really just makes you question whether or not you are being manipulated and whether or not this is truly sincere. And to make the point clear, this particular individual that has sparked these discussions have never ever said that they weren't being treated. I think someone even quoted that they actually said on an interview that they were treated. So it's, again, where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? It's a hard line to draw because we are compassionate people.
Yeah.
We're compassionate people. We have seen the worst of the worst in our genetics. Our genetics has stories of just the worst of life. And so it has yielded, I think, of people that are innately compassionate. And sometimes our compassion can sometimes become our stumbling block when it is not utilized correctly or directed correctly. I agree. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm with Dr. Trissa and what she said in the beginning. Why are we talking about this? We are talking about it because, like I said, we are compassionate people. And the reason we're compassionate people is because Dr. Trissa and myself are wearing pink. And we are wearing pink as a reminder that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. If you are a woman who's over the age of 40 or perhaps over the age of 50, depending on when you and your healthcare provider have decided to start your mammogram screening, if you are not considered to be at high risk, then you should have had your mammogram by now. We're heading towards the end of the year. You're probably due for your mammogram. So go on, make that appointment, get your mammogram done. This is your friendly reminder. This particular episode I'm going to dedicate to my friend who passed on early this year, and she is my constant reminder that the fight continues against breast cancer, as we have mentioned on our Instagram. So we tend to be the most impacted by all cancers, and so breast cancer is no exception. Black women are more likely to have more advanced disease at the time of our diagnosis. We are more likely to be younger at the time of our diagnosis, and we're more likely to have aggressive types of breast cancer, such as inflammatory cancer and triple negative cancers. This is exactly why it is our duty to love ourselves enough to be proactive about our healthcare, and also recognizing that we're also less likely to have access to healthcare. So if you do have access to healthcare, on behalf of the women who don't are struggling to, go ahead and take a stand for them. And also, of course, first take a stand for yourself. Get your tatas checked and love your tatas. So this is us. We are signing out. Dr. Trissa, if they want to find out more about the things you don't care to talk about, where can they find you?
At trissajob.dpt on Instagram. And don't worry, you'll find out all the things that I want to talk about.
I love that. She's like, it is physical therapy month. I will be talking about physical therapy on my platform. So that is the topic I want to talk about. I love it. I love it. And as always, I am Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club. see us here on YouTube with all of our amazing conversations with these. Let me tell y'all, we have an episode coming up at the end of this month. Yo, the panelists on that, listen, set your timers. Make sure your notifications are on because you will want to know when this video drops. I'm telling y'all out there, you're going to want to pull up with some notepads because that conversation
get ready.
will change your entire life. Mark my words, and make sure you listen attentively because if you hear some of the stuff that's being dropped on that episode, it will, I promise you, it will change your life, change your perspective. And as always, when you are done watching that video and this video, watch all the other videos, okay? We work hard to enrich your life with all this information. All right. And when you're done there, hop on over to our Instagram platform. Make sure you check out healthybunk.club and like us, hang out in our stories. People love our stories. Let me tell you, that's where all the folks are up in our stories because all the shenanigans are in the stories. Okay. If you want to laugh and have a good time, let me tell you, these posts with these pregnant women, pregnant women are hilarious. Okay. They are hilarious. And so everybody hang out in our stories. We love you guys for hanging out there. We'll keep posting all the shenanigans because we're here for it all. And when you're done, check out the gear. Make sure you hop on and get your sweater, get your t-shirt, get your tote bag, get your bucket. Where's my bucket? It's somewhere around here. Get your bucket. Okay. Where's my bucket? See, I wear my bucket so often. Oh, y'all. I'm gonna let it rest because I don't know where my bucket hat is. I wear it so often because I love my bucket hat. So make sure you check out your bucket hat. Don't get in my business. Ask me what I was searching over. We love y'all for watching, and we'll see y'all as always on the next episode.
Energy of your intention is what determines your life. Most people don't think about their intention. They just think about what they want to do. Most people don't think about why they want to do it. But what's going to come back to you, the energy that's going to come back to you, is the real why of why you did it.